Welcome, dear viewers, to Anything You Want, the home of stories that touch the heart and stay with you long after the screen fades to black. Before we begin this haunting tale of love, fear, and rebirth, take a moment to subscribe, hit the like button, and press join if you wish to support us in bringing you more stories that move the soul. Because tonight, we revisit a night that shook not just Turkey, not just Italy, but the very idea of what love can endure. It was still dark over Rome when the city's calm was pierced by a desperate cry, the kind of sound that doesn't belong to this world. Outside the ancient walls of San Camillo Hospital, hundreds had gathered, journalists, fans, neighbors, strangers. They stood in silence, some clasping rosaries, others simply watching the doors that might at any moment open with news, good or devastating. Then, at 5:47 a.m., that silence shattered. A man, pale as marble and trembling like a leaf, appeared before the cameras. Barış Arduç, usually the image of composure and strength, now looked hollowed by pain. His hands shook as he clutched a microphone, and when he finally spoke, his voice cracked like thin ice. "If something happens to my wife Elsen and our unborn child," he said slowly, "I won't be able to live either." The crowd froze. The reporters forgot to ask questions. The air felt heavy with fear and love so intertwined that no one dared to breathe. In that moment, a man who had conquered red carpets and film sets stood naked before the world, just a husband terrified of losing everything. Only hours before, their life had seemed like a dream. The couple had been living quietly in Rome while Barış filmed a European co-production. Elçin Sangu, radiant and in her 7th month of pregnancy, often appeared by his side, smiling with that gentle calm that fans adored. Their love story had been called the fairy tale of modern Turkish cinema. But fairy tales have shadows, and theirs came to life just after 2:15 a.m. on the night of May 20th. Elsen's scream cut through the house. Barış found her on the floor, her hands pressed against her abdomen, her body trembling, the sheets drenched in red. For a moment, he froze. Then instinct took over. He called for help, his voice raw, begging the dispatcher to hurry. Kneeling beside her, he whispered through tears. "You promised us, Elsen. You said you'd never leave us. Please, don't leave me now." The ambulance tore through the sleeping city, sirens wailing. Barış sat beside her, holding her hand, his fingers slick with blood. The paramedics shouted words he could barely understand. The only thing he could focus on was her fading pulse under his thumb. When they reached San Camillo, doctors rushed her straight into surgery, an emergency C-section. The baby's heartbeat was weakening, slipping away with every second. In the corridor, Barış's voice broke the sterile silence. "No. It's too soon. Please, don't let me lose her." He tried to follow, but the doors closed in his face. A nurse stopped him gently, and he collapsed to the floor, his hands covering his eyes, whispering one sentence over and over again. "If they don't exist, I don't exist." Inside the operating room, chaos ruled. Monitors screamed, doctors moved in a frenzy, and for a brief, unbearable 40 seconds, Elsen's heart stopped. Those seconds would later be described by one nurse as the longest eternity. Outside, unaware but connected in spirit, Barış's body shook uncontrollably. He felt it, the moment her heart went silent, as if something had torn open inside him. When word reached him that her pulse had vanished, he crumpled to his knees. "No," he screamed, clawing at the cold floor. Then, miraculously, a cry came, first faint, then steady. Her heart had started again. Inside, life had refused to surrender. At dawn, still wearing the same gray shirt stained with his wife's blood, Barış faced the waiting crowd again. Cameras flashed, but he didn't flinch. His eyes were glassy, his expression hollow, but his voice, now low and deliberate, carried a kind of sacred weight. "My Elsen is the meaning of my life," he said. "The child she carries, our miracle. She's in there, fighting for her life. I just want everyone to pray for her. If I lose them, living will have no meaning." His words turned into a prayer that spread across the world. Within minutes, #Elsen Asindua, pray for Elsen, was trending across platforms. Thousands lit candles. Fans wept. Fellow actors posted messages of love and faith. Kerem Bürsin wrote, "Barış's words broke all our hearts. Prayers for Elsen." Neslihan Atagal added, "Motherhood begins in the fire of fear. Elsen is the embodiment of strength." Even Engin Akurek posted, "They faced the storm. They'll come back stronger." And through it all, Anything You Want viewers, you, our community, watched in disbelief, sending your prayers and comments from every corner of the world. If you're with us tonight, take a second to comment hope for Elsen below, and don't forget to subscribe, because this story, more than any film or script, shows what human hearts are capable of when pushed to their limits. After 3 hours of relentless battle, a small, fragile cry broke the silence of the operating room. Their son was born, tiny, trembling, but alive. His lungs were underdeveloped, and he was immediately placed in an incubator. Elsen's condition was critical yet stable. When Barış heard those words, alive, but fragile, he sank to the floor again, this time with tears of pure relief. Later, as doctors guided him to the neonatal unit, he pressed his forehead against the incubator's glass and whispered, "Your name is Hope. Because your mother carried you through fire. We will raise you together, my son, always together." Every morning since that day, he visits 2 rooms, first Elsen's, then his son's. To her, he reads poems. Verses about the sun rising after the darkest nights. To the baby, he tells stories about courage and love, his voice trembling but steady. Then, when the hospital quiets down at night, he sits outside by the entrance and whispers into the Roman wind. "One day, we'll all walk out of here together, you, your mother, and I." Days later, Professor Alessandra Ferri, head of the hospital's maternal unit, addressed the media. Mr. Arduç's presence has had a profound impact on his wife's recovery. She responds to his voice even in sleep. The baby's lungs are improving, and Mrs. Sangu's life is no longer in danger. Those words rippled through social media like sunlight breaking through clouds. News outlets called it a miracle born of love. Fans wept openly. And everywhere, people repeated the same quote from that night. "If they don't exist, I don't exist." Weeks have passed now. Rome has returned to its noise, its rhythm, its chaos, but for Barış Arduç, nothing is the same. His world has narrowed to 2 heartbeats. He still wakes up in the hospital corridors, still checks every monitor sound, still whispers thank you into the air. Fame, scripts, awards, all of it has lost its shine. What remains is simple and sacred, his wife, his son, and the fragile thread of life that connects them. He has chosen silence over spotlight. Friends say he has turned down every interview and every film offer since that night. "I just want to watch them breathe," he told one close friend. "That's my success now." At their home, a line has been painted across the nursery wall, a quote they both chose. We survived the storm because love refused to drown. And that, dear viewers, is the story of a night when love stared death in the face and refused to bow. A night when a man known for his on-screen strength showed the world what true fragility and faith look like. As you finish this video, ask yourself, what would you have done in his place? Could you carry that kind of fear and still believe in miracles? Let us know your thoughts below. And don't forget, if you want to keep following these powerful, emotional stories of courage, love, and celebrity life, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Anything You Want, and press the join button to help us bring you even more stories that touch the soul. Because somewhere out there, another heartbeat is fighting to be heard. And here, on Anything You Want, we'll make sure it never goes unnoticed.